Good morning. My name's Andrew Hoy, and I'm here with John Harden and Rufus Bear, and we are going to look at one of the games that John and Rufus played yesterday morning in the Exchange French. So, without further ado, do you guys want to take it away?
Yeah, so I thought what Rufus was about to say right before we began was interesting, and I thought we could start there, which is that Rufus, not to put you on the spot, but you were saying that you feel like maybe choosing the exchange is a mistake in itself. But I
Yeah.
was interested in why you sort of go with that anyway.
Oh, because I don't feel comfortable playing anything else against the French. If I play the advanced, I feel like even though I know like the general sort of theory from the black side of playing the advanced, I feel like from white side, I don't exactly know how to rebut it.
Mm,
And I've just never bothered to like learn the Tarrasch or anything from like white's point of view, even though I know the Tarrasch is fine.
yeah.
Uh, it's not entirely true. I learned the Tarrasch for one game where my opponent played the French a lot, and then he ended up not playing the French, and so I just couldn't be bothered after that.
Yeah, I could understand that. It's funny. I share some of your difficulties, I think, with the advance. That sometimes somehow like if I'm playing against it, I can have trouble. But if I'm playing white in those positions, I often just seem to be hanging a center pawn somehow and feeling like an idiot.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but but I was going to say it's funny because I kind of have the reverse relationship with the French in general, just because a lot of the reason that I started playing the French was because I was having so much trouble against it um, as white. Right, I lost a couple of key games, one particularly memorably in the last round of the like Northeast Open, which is Andrew. What city in Connecticut is that
It's
played
in
in?
Stamford.
That's what I thought, right? I think Andrew was there with me that time. But
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna finish in first place if I could win the game,
Right.
and I lost. But it was a tough battle. It went to an end game, all that kind of thing. But I made a mistake out of the opening. I let the guy have my dark squared bishop essentially because I didn't know the lines, and it was like after that I was just like I am learning this opening because I am so sick of not understanding what to do. So I don't. Maybe that's not opposite, but I'm just realizing like that was why I
Yeah,
adopted the French in the first place. I don't know how you came to play the French, but
someone basically just suggested to me the French because I used to play E5, and I would get like the very skill like what you see at all the Scholastic games like the Italian like that was like the
right.
only thing I would play. And someone suggested me to play the French, and so I learned the French. But
Yeah.
yeah, from white side, I don't like. I mean, I play the exchange because I'm used to it at this point, and I get decent results with it. But I know that like as I hopefully advance more with my rating, that it's going to become probably more drawish. And I don't want to just like by like the second move or third move or whatever have my opponent like have the option of going into this very drawn sort of
Yeah.
game,
Yeah.
especially if
No.
I'm playing white like in a tournament. Like I don't like
Yeah,
I
that's one of my
shy.
biggest issues as well. I find that it's very hard to pick lines, especially for black, where you can fight for a win against a lower rated player. And, like, obviously, every opening is drawn for move one if people play perfectly. So I think it's as
Right.
much just picking complicated lines or lines where there's likely to be some understanding mismatch so that you can create winning chances later.
Yeah. No. But yeah, that's an interesting, something that has been occurring to me a lot, and I've been sort of working on, not working quite as hard as I need to be to get it, but I've been playing occasionally with starting to play D4 as well as E4. And one of my major motivations for that was just that, you see, I experience this the most often when I'm playing like long bullet matches, right? When I get stuck in some kind of a bullet match. I was going to use inappropriate words, but with some random person online, that I have this strong desire to have a different opening. But I think
Hmm.
also, towards Andrew's point, that it feels useful going in against a 1500, or somebody that I know is going to be very happy with a draw in a lot of situations, having something that isn't what I normally play, but I still feel good about. Whereas currently, if I play something I don't normally play, I'm like, I'm really hamstringing myself, probably more than I am putting anything to them.
Right.
But I guess what I was trying to get at was like this idea of maybe having other openings so that I don't have to deal with, because I have found that whenever I play lower rated players in tournaments, it always seems to be an exchange. That's like far and away what I end up with, even more than the advance, which I think is also reasonably common. When I teach a lot of my students to play the French, and like if they're 1100, I show them the exchange and the advance, and then we're done. Like we're done learning for a while. I'm like, don't worry about knight c3. Like you're only gonna play that against, like 1400s will play knight c3 against you, and they're gonna beat you no matter what. So like here's a couple of things, but don't worry about it too much. And I handle it, more when they get a little stronger. But anyway, okay. Well, that was just something I was interested in. So yeah, so of course we enter the exchange and bishop d3. I mean, a lot of this game...
Also to note, the main reason why I played it here was just because we had played it multiple times before, so I thought I'd give it another shot.
Yeah, of course. No, and I was very glad to get that chance, because I sort of wanted to redeem my play. I mean, this is, it's fine. We'll get there in a moment, but like one of the things that I did want to... I was disappointed that you didn't play a4, because I was specifically interested in trying to right the ship of that variation, and sort of like figure out what I had done wrong. Not to say that I even have to win, but just to not sort of get crushed. Try and fight it more towards an equal battle. But yeah, so all of this started exactly the same way. Obviously the idea of knight b4 is present here through a lot of these variations. I have to say that in these kind of positions, right, I know that there are recommendations sometimes to go for this knight b4 stuff, but at least in blitz, I rarely end up being, all that happy with these positions. Like I feel like my knight ends up getting kicked back, and I don't know how to exploit it. I don't know if this is something that either of you have seen much of, this particular weird line.
I don't mind it so much for either color, I guess. Black has a reasonable rerouting idea. The white bishop eventually has to come to c2, if I can draw arrows. So it's just kind of slow, but the queen side is messier, which I think, if anything, is going to favor black, because it's something that you're hoping to take advantage of the knight on e2 being a little bit misplaced.
Yeah, it's I guess what you've just said hits it for me, that it's like, fine, it's a position. But this is like a recommended line in one of my French books, as a way to whatever, like, threaten to win the two bishops. But it's like, in practice, it's not that hard for white to deal with. It doesn't end up being anything special. Anyway, just sort of mentioning that. But of course, c3, in some ways, c3 simplifies things for me, because it's like, all right, well, clearly none of that is going to happen. Not to worry. I don't have a lot to say about... I feel like today's going to be a little shorter, which is part of the other reason I was interested in some of the other conversation around the opening choice and such, because so much of this is ground we tread. Yeah, I don't know. There are... Maybe it's not present in these lines, but I know there are lines where, there are sometimes ideas of displacing the bishop off of this diagonal. I think actually a lot of them happen before the bishop development, because there are these ideas sometimes of even playing queen e2 check, right? And then, depending on how black answers, coming over here with it, that I've seen. But I don't think any of that's present here. I just wanted to sort of mention things that I know in a desire to flesh it out. But anyway, Yeah. Okay. So, Rufus, you were saying beforehand that this was just a case. We ended up with something very different here. Um, I think. I'm trying to think here. So after Queen D7, this is where we started to diverge. No,
No,
this
yeah,
this was the
after
same, right? This was the same.
Yeah,
Now
and
last
then
time Rufus played
then last time I
A4.
played A4, yeah, which
Yeah.
I think I maybe should have done again, probably. Um,
I mean, I
just to
think.
discourage long castling and what
Yeah, I
eventually
don't.
happens in the game.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry for talking over you there. Yeah, I think. I think as far as I'm concerned, it definitely was enough to put the scare into me, and it seemed like, at least just via engine analysis, that I was right to be worried about long castles after this position, because your attack is just quicker. And I was noting when I was streaming this game, I was noting how not only is this A4 move, I think, good for reducing my ability to sharpen the game up and get an attack, but Bishop G5 specifically is a move that I have a high level of comfort with, that I think I feel great as black seeing this move, because this F6 move is so useful in these positions. So, controlling these squares, right, particularly nice to just get rid of knight e5 as a threat, for example. It does cost me some things on the light squares, right? And we'll see that in the game, that there's some sort of tactical little details that black has to be ginger about. But this speeds up my attack. This is the thing I wanted to mention, right? I gain a tempo on my kingside pawn starting to move.
Yeah, I think what probably happened was I misremembered the move order from the last game. Because I think in the last game I went A4 and then had the idea of Bishop G5 to provoke F6 once you've castled. And so I played Bishop G5 here, remembering the last game. You played F6, and then I realized I didn't have time to play A4 before you castle.
Yeah, so
right.
this was the last position.
Okay, so I went Bishop E3 here, but eventually there's the idea of Bishop G5, I believe, in the last game. To provoke that F6 and the weakness along the diagonal that goes to your king. That was essentially the idea I had at the time, but I completely forgot that obviously after F6 I have to move back my bishop and no longer have time to stop you from long castling. And that was
yeah, it's interesting. That's interesting. Just the timing there of making sure the king goes where you want him first, and then trying to
provoking weaknesses.
Yeah, there's something there that feels like almost a principle. But that's funny. It's interesting. Like, I think Bishop E3 is not a real winner of a move, but there's merit to these kind of, we see these things obviously, like waiting to win the tempo sometimes in the Queen's Gambit and things, with when the pawns are here and here, but these kind of gamesmanship sort of, what are you doing? I'm gonna wait. I'll just sort of make non-committal moves until I figure out what you're doing, and it seemed to work really well for you last time. So F6, Bishop H4 is.
I don't love Bishop H4. If anything, I might go back to E3 for the same reason. And assuming black is castling long, which I think he's more or less committed to after F6, I don't really want to give him the time for G5 with tempo on the bishop. So that's my rationale for putting the bishop back on E3. I think it does help in some lines if you want to play for like a C4 plan, just because you're going to have extra defense on D4. But again, it's just kind of a preference thing, because on G3 you get to trade off the strong attacking bishop.
That was my idea with bringing it back to H4, was with the eventual trade of the bishops. But yeah, I definitely see what, especially in hindsight, why putting on E3 would have been better, perhaps. Yeah.
I think it's mostly just preference. I'm sure everything's going to be more or less equal in the computer's mind.
I can't. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't have a lot of extra commentary myself to offer there. I think, Bishop E3. I guess I still have to castle before I can do anything like knight F5 to go after it. But this was the other merit, maybe, of choosing a different line, was after Bishop H4, right? I was just sort of trying to get this to happen, as quickly as possible and try and win the bishop pair and make something of that. Which did end up happening in the game, right? So castles, I think right here you got to go bishop g3 right away. Just because knight f5 is coming, you know. I don't know how important it is, right? I mean, maybe the bishop pair isn't that important. I know the position is pretty closed up, and there's not a ton of avenue for me to open it either. But that's what I was thinking, was that this made more sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. I think black's probably already better, at least practically speaking, just because the king is going to be a little bit safer, and I think the light square bishops are really the big difference here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's funny. I remarked on this in the stream, right? That Rufus, this guy killed me. That previous French exchange match.
Oh yeah.
This light square diagonal was just like ruining my life. And there were so many little tactical easy pressures and things that I had to account for, and in this game at least I was able to avoid that stress. But yeah, I don't know. I thought this made more sense, and then maybe b4 to come. I don't know what you were thinking about at the time, Rufus.
Yeah, I was probably just thinking play b4 now because I suspected that my dark square bishop was going to be removed. I mean, I guess if I traded, if you trade the knight for the bishop, then you do have the bishop pair. But after b5, it's come. I just wanted to advance my b pawn early enough that I wasn't both down my bishop and had no attack to show for it, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so yeah, so in any case, of course, this came, and I said, all right, well, I think knight f5, I think what I remarked yesterday was, knight f5, I think, helps me with a couple of things. That, of course, there's this idea, but there's also now some means of egress for the knight, you know, when the inevitable b5 comes. I don't just have to choose, you know, knight a5 or b8 or really kind of two squares that I'm not so sure about. Although I think maybe knight a5 was better than I gave it credit for later. But I just know, you know, typically it's like, feels like my knight gets sidelined out there. But yeah, I don't know. Okay, so at this point I felt like I had to take, you know, I've spent the tempo to move the knight. I'm not sure why I'm letting you exchange. There is maybe this idea of taking and then knight takes. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no. Yeah, I was also thinking about how many moves the knight had in relation to how many moves my bishop has made.
Yes.
And like if that was beneficial for you to take, I figured it probably was regardless. But I just that was something I was trying to figure out when we were playing as well. I don't remember.
Right,
like
yeah,
what,
they've both. Yeah, these two pieces.
They moved a bunch. Yeah.
Yeah, broken all the rules. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. To be completely honest.
I think you have to take on g3 here. I think anything else isn't going to be consistent, and
right.
You kind of have to get something going with the king side, just with the opposite castling.
Yeah, and it felt like I've seen these positions before where white played this bishop g3 move more quickly, and that it always felt to me like when this trade happened, you know, black can still be fine. It's still a chess game, all of these obvious things, but my pressure on the king side is much less.
Right.
And, I was like, all right, well, I'd much rather play that kind of king side attack than have to sort of find the win all over again. So yeah, I was happy with this. I was just sort of, but you're right. I had to spend an awful lot of knight moves to do it. Right.
We seem to have lost Rufus.
Oh dear. He was so young. That's interesting. Oh, whoa. Now we're getting this weird split screen thing.
Yes, because we have
we had one fewer camera. Yeah. Let's see what's going on with him.
Everybody can look at me twice while we
I'll
wait
be
for
back in
Rufus
a
to come
sec.
back.
The Wi-Fi crashed. I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, I think it's yeah. It's
Yeah.
an interesting game so far. I do think it's
Curious.
interesting to hear your thought process as you guys go through the different games and the different lines.
Yeah. Um,
All right. Sorry
no
about that.
worries. Technical glitches affect us all. Okay, so this was a place where I thought for a really long time. And I'm happy with that. I feel like it merited that kind of thought process because, from my standpoint, I had reached the end of familiarity. You know, I mean, I knew that I had.
Just to back up 1 second, can we talk about
Just happened.
H
Yeah,
takes
I
instead?
apologize. Yeah, of course.
I like H takes a little bit more. I think that it's you're kind of giving up the structure anyways, but I don't see a good way to use the F file, so you might as well get the extra pawn in the center. I think the H pawn is a little bit slow to start the attack, and even if the pawn comes to H4, I'm not really sure that you have to worry about it yet. I guess I'm
Yeah,
going to play something like this.
I thought that this looked a little bit more normal to me as well,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, I don't know.
Yeah, just to
I'm
make
not
it
sure.
concrete, after H5, maybe you play Bishop E2. That kind of stops H4. So
Right,
I don't know what the best way to play for black would be here, but this is kind of another interesting position.
Yeah, Rufus, did you? I mean, was F takes G automatic, you know, for you, or did you have something that you were thinking about there? Oh,
He's
is
gone.
he gone again?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's a shame. I was shocked that he didn't have anything to say about it, so that makes a lot more sense. You're here watching Acceptable Chess, where we lose Wi-Fi on a regular basis. Wait and stay in suspense to see which member of the committee drops next.
All right.
Okay, we're back.
Fixed,
Okay.
hopefully.
Great. Good. Don't leave again. I have plenty of time to talk to Andrew already, okay? I don't spend all day talking to Andrew. Okay, what we were talking about before you crashed again was Andrew was remarking, I don't know if you caught this. Andrew was remarking that he preferred H takes here to F takes, feeling like, Andrew, I'm going to save you your breath,
Sure.
feeling like you're not in a position to use the F file much anyway, and that maybe it offers just an extra pawn in the center. But I was interested, I assume you had thought about this,
Yeah.
but I wanted to know, you know, was there something you were afraid of, right? That kind of thing. Things like we talked about last time, right?
Right. So, quite naively, I did F takes because I thought after, if I go back, after F takes, I have an idea of using H3 as a lever. Obviously, doesn't work because takes, which you see later in the game. But I use the idea of H3, and then you can't take here because if I take and you take, then I have a skewer on
Right.
your
Yes.
on your queen. That was something I was like, okay, so I want to maintain the possibility of having H3 followed by a G4 push, which really puts your bishop out of the way.
Yes.
But obviously, when I was calculating that, I didn't look far enough into this. I had thought about it for a while. I thought about H3, bishop takes, takes, queen takes, and then I wasn't. I like my candidate moves here were queen E2. I think I thought about rook up as well after bishop takes. But that was later on. But yeah, the basic idea of why I took with the F pawn was because of H3 F G4.
Got it. I was, you know, I don't think, you know, necessarily thinking that far ahead, but I have to say, when we get to that position, it was funny because you had said, you know, two analyses ago, you had said that this was like one of your primary fears, you know?
Yeah.
And I would do this, and I was like, well, here, I think it works. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I knew as soon as I played it on you took. I was like, yeah, this is what I get.
Yeah, I don't love the plan just because even if it works, I'm not sure that it
right.
it's something that you want, or maybe white takes on f5, but even here, I think the dark squares are just too weak. I guess this is probably the line that's after g4.
Or then queen takes.
Yeah, I think h5 is just very quick, and there's no good way to get a dark square bishop off of these squares. So I don't know. It just even this plan of bringing the knight around to look at h4 and f4 looks strong.
I have to. At some point, I wanted to make sure I mentioned this. That one of the things that's always interesting to me in these opposite side castle where I've gotten in f6, these kind of structures, is that at least in Blitz and Bullet, right? It's not a mistake that I would expect to ever make on a game this slow, but is like, playing the knight here to this very natural square and then playing h5, just like, oops. There's a little bit of tenderness around these light squares that you do have to be mindful of in terms of how to get this guy into the game, and it was something I was looking at a lot. But okay, yeah, so going back here, right? So f takes was the move. And then the other thing I was going to say was I thought for like 20 minutes here. I mean, what is that, 17 minutes maybe? It looks like maybe 18.
Professional math tutor, ladies and gentlemen.
I knew I had reasonable rates.
Very reasonable when you can't keep track of time.
Yeah, exactly. Shut up. All right, we're moving on.
It's too early for my wit.
Yeah, seriously, I haven't had enough coffee. All right, leave me alone. Leave me alone. Students after this. I knew that I had won some positional concessions. I felt strongly that I had a good position. I hadn't used too much time yet because all of this was familiar to me, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't rush anything. But also, because I've faced this position so many times in Blitz and Bullet, right, I have never, despite having seen it a bunch of times, felt like I hadn't necessarily invested enough in really understanding what to do next. And so I was looking at h5, I was looking at g5, I was saying, well, maybe are both of these wrong? This rook is not quite supported, that I can maybe take and own the e-file. Should I be looking at doing that? And what I ultimately decided, of course, was to play g5, but I had a lot of questions here. I think in hindsight, especially given that things obviously worked out, but I think that I kind of decided during the game that putting the rooks on the file just was going to lead to exchanges of rooks. And even if I temporarily own the e-file, that it's just not, it just feels like experience has told me it's not that material. You just put the queen on f2 and then the other rook will come over and now all the rooks are traded. And I've played that game and, it's not particularly exciting. And doesn't give me nearly as many attacking chances. So I just said, all right, let's not offer him any opportunity to trade. He can't do anything with the e-file anyway. There's no good entry point here.
No, your rooks are good. Like I think you want to leave the rook on h8 to support.
Oh, that
something.
I knew, but I'm talking about maybe this rook.
Yeah, I don't know. What's the rook on e1 really doing right now? What's the rush?
Yeah, I kind of regretted having gone e1 rather than f1, especially after I took with the f pawn. I'm like, all right, well, now I'd love to get in bishop f5 after like your light square bishop has done something, but without the rook there on f1, it's kind of kind of useless.
Right. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. The rook would be very useful right now to let the queen go to c2, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we just get a normal looking attack going, how are you each planning to play this? Because I think that's kind of the question that is going to guide everything else, just because this is how you have to calculate these opposite positions.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, man, that's funny. I don't know. I must have thought about this at the time, but it's completely escaping me now. I think
you're both attacking with pawns, so I think continuing to push the pawns makes the most sense.
Right,
there's not much for the pieces.
I'm sure I was just thinking about h5. Right? If I had to, I'm sure that was what I was.
I mean, that looks most correct to me. And then this looks kind of like a typical position where you have to play a5 before b5. Because you don't want the knight coming to c4.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's going to hold it up.
You end up with that in the dragon a lot too.
Yes.
On the
Um,
king side, not the queen side, but
yeah, and then I guess H4. I don't think there's
yeah,
any reason
and
to
again, we
delay.
can ignore taking time out to stop the plans just to like look at the attacking moves and to count the tempi. But I agree with H4, and I do think that this is a pretty serious threat to take.
Right. Yeah, especially as it opens up the H file.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it's going to there are sacrificial ideas at some moment.
Definitely.
Yeah, I
But
think.
maybe you can take. It's again a little risky, but there are going to be tricks on f5. Like again, this doesn't work because the bishop's like not
Right.
going to get enough material. But something like this is always going to at least be a consideration for white.
Wow,
Uh,
that's cute.
yeah, that'd be great.
But Bishop G4 here, right, is what you're saying, Andrew?
I was thinking I'd just take the knight, but it's probably
right.
Oh, I see. Just take the knight. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't counted everything yet. It's going to be really messy because something like this will happen, and it's down in exchange, but the f pawn's nice. I don't know. It looks like it's going to be good for white in most of
Yeah.
these lines.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah,
Okay.
just kind of a fun little
Mhm.
idea.
Yeah, no, that's really. I mean, that Bishop F5 move is just really sneaky in a lot of these lines.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that I want to. It's nothing special because as I found out during the game, it turned out it's not really anything. But it was a line that gave me a lot of anxiety, so I want to talk about it. But it's not.
Yeah.
It's a little bit further down the line.
Anyways, where I started to go with that though is when you think about the idea of g5 then h5, I think it makes more sense to play g5 first, as opposed to h5 first.
Yeah. Yeah. That was I was sort of just not sure if I wanted to take on h3 right away if we
Mhm.
played h3. That was one thing that I was thinking about, and I wanted to keep myself the option of retreating, and so
Yeah, the key point for me here is there are these bishop g6 ideas that there's no reason to allow something like this
right,
when you can just
right,
play g5
or
first.
knight h4 as well, right? It's probably also
Yeah, we'd probably
Oh,
have to
but-
play something like
yeah.
queen
I'm losing
a4.
the- yeah, what am I saying?
but-
Yeah, exactly. I'm losing the queen.
Well, I like queen a4 as well, so I think that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So good.
Like
yeah,
bishop
I'm-
e5, and it's just going to be some endgame of some sort.
Right. Yeah, I can't really avoid all those trades. Yeah. Okay. So G5 still makes sense, I guess, in the light of day, so to speak.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Second.
I hadn't really. I don't think I'd actually thought about it that much. Kind of funny. I
Yeah.
think it took me by surprise. I don't know. I think obviously we can look at what happened. So I think I
Sure.
think
I mean,
it has to
I
be
had
looked at.
I had thought about A4,
Right.
but basically, I mean, I hadn't thought about it a ton, but I thought about it, and I figured that you were going to win that pawn race, and your attack's stronger than mine, but obviously I should have looked more at bishop takes here because it's the thing that I always sort of dread in these positions,
Right.
as mentioned previously. But,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you won a few minutes from me of
Mhm.
extra caution because of that conversation 2 weeks ago. That
Right,
was
yeah.
like, Rufus
I
is
was
never
sort
gonna
of,
allow this if it's good,
sort of hoping that might play into it as well. I was like, man, he'll have 3 pawns for the bishop, and I really have to. I don't think it would hold, but if it is going to hold, I'd have to find an accurate move basically every single time. Which I don't really feel comfortable with, but maybe he'll because of the conversation last time, he'll just be like, oh well, it'll at least take more time off. But
Yeah. Yeah, well, so this is the line that I wanted to share. As silly as it is, right? It's not going to look like anything in the end, I'm afraid. But I was looking at this, and I sat here for another little. I mean, I spent 10 minutes on this move, so this was my other. I really think it was just those 2 moves, really. For the most part,
Yeah.
I was reasonably efficient, but those 2 moments, I took a heck of a lot of time. And what I was looking at here was, trying to make sure that this works, trying to, and of course, ultimately this happened in the game, so we don't have to look at this too much right now.
Right.
We'll get there in a moment. But what I was intrigued by, what popped into my head after maybe 5 minutes, and made me think maybe I had missed the point and was going wrong, was this idea.
Right.
And of course now I have to be very careful about this whole thing that we've already talked about. And maybe that there was something here where, after bishop g4, knight h2. But what I realized ultimately, right, after another 30 seconds or something, and I was talking to my student about this, how sometimes these little moves are the ones that ruin everything for you, right? I've played attacks like this and thought that I was, getting them, and then just king b8 completely ends the problem.
I like king b8 even before bishop g4. I think just king b8
yeah,
here.
Okay, sure.
I don't think you really have to worry about something like this.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I think queen f4 here, just like in the game.
Yeah. I would also think about rook e8 right away.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Again, it's a little bit more dangerous now because you do have to worry about this.
Right.
Maybe knight e7.
Yeah, I think I like probably king b8 better.
I don't want to allow this though. If king b8 here, I think this is a strong way to defend.
No. I'm sorry.
Immediately. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah,
that was the first move that I like too.
Yeah. No, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, just king b8 right away. Of course, leave the bishop and take it. If it works, it works.
Right. It's probably going to force this now.
Yeah, that was just like a really funny moment to me. I was sort of like, wow, like that little quiet move and just solves everything. But yeah, just constantly having to be alert for, pinning and winning. Okay, and then the rest of this game, I think, it's not for me to declare, but
sure.
But the rest of it, I think, started to be a little bit more.
Yeah, earlier in the game, I wanted to push, when it was much earlier in the game when you had two attacking pieces against my knight, or was it? Oh wait, no. Wait, it was actually, was it
later?
Here? Yeah, it might have been here. I kept thinking I really wanted b5 here to work. With the main point being that after takes, if you don't take back with the queen, like say you took here, if you don't take back with the queen and you take with the pawn, then obviously have check, king has to move there and then check. And
yeah.
I really wanted that to work earlier, but then obviously I saw that after queen takes, it's not really much of a threat. You just end up being up the exchange. But I wanted to say that earlier, but I'd forgotten.
Yeah, right. No, but that's, I'm glad you mentioned it. Just to, obviously we have you here to hear your thoughts.
So anytime I see this b5 move, and like I end up with this in different structures a lot, the gut reaction is to play knight a5.
Yeah, that's.
I think it shuts down a lot of attacks.
I made a glancing reference to this earlier, right? But I was like, oh, knight a5 apparently was actually good. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I see it more now, but in my head was just the mere fact that the knight was loose, and that he was going to pick up some tempi. But of course, it seems very obvious now that like queen a4 b6 and.
Yeah, I mean, actually no, I guess I couldn't have. I was thinking of doing some knight maneuver like that, but obviously I want to deal with this bishop first, so I wouldn't have time to do it.
I see how that is maybe a more a better move than I realized, because this square is appealing, and it's nice to think that so often these c4 ideas come and there's all these open lines against my king. To be able to sort of stop that seems great. So I'll have to just keep my eyes open for that in the future. I think I dismissed it out of hand.
That's why when we were looking at the other line, white has to play a5 before b5.
Right. No, that's true. In that position, I recognize it, right? It's just I don't know. I think that, well, like I said, it shouldn't make a difference. I see that now. but in my head, there's a big difference between with a pawn on a4, where that knight is just basically untouchable,
Right.
and when there isn't, where maybe you can stack some pieces. And,
In this specific position, I do like this idea as well because you're sacking a piece on the king side. You might as well get the extra attacker.
right. That was part of my thing. That I will give myself credit. That was part of my thinking as well. An extra defensive f5 too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this knight a5 move I think was maybe a little better actually. Yeah, okay. So then ultimately he grabbed the piece, and as Rufus said, I reasoned earlier that as long as I could get 3 pawns, it was going to be fine. And I saw there really wasn't a way for him to stop me.
Yeah, unless I wanted to do rook takes on e7 and just be down. Rook takes rook down, then the exchange, and save the pawn. But I figured that would be worse.
Well, even there, I didn't get right. I mean, I had looked at this, I think, and even here, I can throw this check in, right, and then take. So, it's
right.
not. I think.
Not great.
Not worth it.
No.
I had looked at that in the game, because as I said, I mean, it's good, right? It's one of the things that's good about playing somebody that is putting in the effort, I took this very seriously at the end here. Like, okay, is there any, what am I missing? There's something,
So Rufus, what were you thinking the evaluation was? Do you think you were?
Oh, at this point, I knew it was bad.
Okay.
At this point, I knew I was lost. Earlier, when I was calculating bishop takes h3, let's see, that would have been back. Even back here, right?
When which pawn do you recapture with, right?
Yeah, when I was calculating bishop takes h3 at this point, in my head I saw a position and I was like, I think it's holdable. And then when I saw it over the board, I was like, oh no, this is bad.
Not so holdable, yeah.
Yeah.
When even the queens can get traded in, black's just much better. I think it's a big problem.
Yeah, precisely. And I was sort of hoping for the queen to get traded because it would make it slightly easier. But I was like, no, this is definitely really bad. I clearly miscalculated, and maybe I should have. Part of it is I've been reading Think Like a Grandmaster, right? And so I'm trying not to repeat calculation that I've already done, right? in order to save some time, but I try to be thorough with it the first time around. And so I later on when I played h3, I was sort of, I mean, I looked at it a little bit, but I was sort of thinking back to when I had calculated earlier with knight takes, which pawn to recapture.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, there's no need for me. I shouldn't recalculate this because I've already looked at h3. Obviously, maybe I should have looked further in the depth and seen oh well, this is just really bad. But
that's the Kotov book, right?
I believe so. Yeah. Kotov.
I have to say full credit to you for working your way through that. I bought that book a million years ago.
I mean, I'm only just gotten around to it. I mean, I've only bought it recently as well, but
So that's actually one of the things in the book that I really disagree with. I do think it's important to double check the calculation. I think a lot of what he talks about, where go to the end, make an evaluation, that's really useful. But in terms of a chess game, in modern chess, it's all about these. You have 40 positions and you have to find the best move 40 times.
Right.
I think you kind of have to look at each move individually and recalculate and double check the calculations carefully. And I think there are some shortcuts you can take. Certainly, any tactical ideas you see are probably going to work in later positions, and you can figure out which pieces have to be moved for some shot to work or something to become an idea. But for something like this, I don't know that I would skimp on recalculating something like h3.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that now.
Yeah. And unless you're getting into time pressure, I really wouldn't worry about it either.
Gotcha.
I have a different criticism of that book, which is that I merely found it a bit impenetrable. Maybe now, granted, when I first started to read it, I was probably 300 points weaker, at least. So maybe that just made, and maybe 10 years younger. But I don't know, his discussion of it just doesn't describe. Now he's a grandmaster and I'm not, but there's something there where the way that chess makes sense to me wasn't. It didn't help me. If that, I don't know. I'll have to think about that book a little more before I could maybe articulate it better. But it's very mechanical, the way that he thinks, and describes this process. And
Right.
I feel like the way that I approach chess is I don't know.
More
know.
fluid. Or...
Yeah, my gut comes into it a lot more, and maybe that's to my detriment, but that was my feeling at the time. But I don't know. I've got it on the shelf with a million other books I haven't finished.
Yeah, so the reason I brought up what your evaluation was here, I think if you're thinking that White's lost, you start playing for crazy counterattacks.
Right.
And maybe Rookie 2 is something worth thinking
something
about.
I was looking at, yeah.
Because now at least you have the idea of Queen A4 to try and do something over on the Queen side, just because the King is a little bit isolated there. Like, I might pitch the F3 knight at some moment just to try and get some desperate attack going. Like, even here, if a move like H5, and ignore the Queen for a moment.
Sure.
Okay.
Like, Queen A4 is an idea because I don't think we really have all the time to take this and allow the Queen to come into A8. It's it's probably just enough to come up with some way to hold. Like, already there are going to be tricks like Queen A8 and Queen B8, and then like Knight F5 or Bishop F5 and Queen C6 ideas. And again, none of these are working. There are defenses everywhere, but it's just kind of the desperate attack that might work.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Right, it's better than nothing. Right, I follow. That's interesting.
Yeah, rather than trying to hold what ultimately just be like positioning ground down. Obviously, I missed the tactical sequence later, but instead of just being positioning ground down, play for some sort of attack that you might miss some way.
Right. And even here, if something like this happens, you can think about whether there's a way to get to the F5 square to try and do something like Queen F3 maybe, or F1, and then if you can move the knight somewhere, like if there's a lazy move like this, there are going to be tricks here.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I see what you mean. Huh.
Yeah, just a thought for like kind of desperation.
Right, practical play kind of
things.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, it is 10:26. I'm going to move this along. So, Queen E2, right, I grab the pawn. Queen G2. Queen F4 was, I think, I do think the queen trade is probably fine, but I just thought, the fact that your king is over on this side, just as one example, said to me, there's the world with all of these minor pieces and the king over there. There's a world in which you can set up some kind of blockade, maybe.
I think more importantly, you have no light square bishop. I think it's premature to trade queens unless you can get some good light square control.
Right. Yeah.
Now, in this case, I think the way to do that is to play knight g6 quickly and then put the knight somewhere. And I don't even know how this would go. Something like this probably. And then you can think about knight f4, and now the h-pawn probably runs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think you have to get some light square control before you're willing to trade queens.
That makes sense. I had definitely not thought about it that way. That's an interesting insight. Yeah, I was just thinking of it more from like the Strapunsky wisdom of whose king is less safe, right? And clearly it's White's, so I want to keep my queen.
Yep.
So, but that, yeah, I like that. That plan is interesting. Okay, so, and then here, okay, so this is what I wanted to get to. I wanted to make sure we got to this before I've got to go along, not sharply at 10:30, but I just, I sort of thought an hour-ish would be a good limit. But here, knight g6 is missing the chance. And you had a chance here to get back in it at least a little, right? To go from lost to just worse, which would be a big upgrade. I guess that I don't remember. Fortunately, I don't have the engine in front of me, so we'll have to do it the good way. But I think g4 right away here is the move.
Yeah, so for that reason, instead of knight d2, I was looking at rook f1. I think the queen is low on squares, and I think lining the rook up for defensive ideas, like even just defending the knight in extra time, is probably a more practical try.
Well, but see here, I had actually thought about this right back when I had calculated this all the way out from the bishop sack during my 10-minute thing. And here I have queen e3.
Yeah, and I guess there's
the
no
piece.
good way to have tricks on the light squares. Yeah, that's fair. It's that looks pretty good.
So yeah, because I had thought about it, I was like, oh, is the queen gonna end up in trouble there? It's a little bit. There's not a ton of squares to go to. Am I gonna regret not trading? And then I spotted that move and said, okay.
I was just trying to avoid a way to not run into g4, but I think you're right. It's all pretty bad.
Yeah.
That's...
Yeah, I don't. But see, I need to look at this a little bit more because I didn't. Maybe I considered it a little bit in the game, but I didn't think so much of it. I'm not. I guess I'm not so clear on what the immediate why this is such a pressing. Has to be played right now. I mean, I'm not sure where the knight goes. I admit, but I don't see anything immediately hanging. I guess right here would be not unreasonable.
Well, that's the big problem because like the knight really doesn't have any good squares.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's fair. But yeah, like how does black continue here? I guess I just wasn't so clear on, how to keep pressing was why I didn't do something like this, right? I wanted to try and control some squares more first, but it turns out to be wrong, but I'm not so clear on why this is so strong, other than I guess that it prevents the main defensive idea. So I can give you that, which is, so after knight g6, Rufus, this is not my own invention, but I guess knight h2 here is a surprisingly strong move with the idea.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
Knight h2 is super common after bishop h3 sacks in like closed e4 e5 positions as well, just to try and get this queen g4 in. I think after g4 the knight is just so low on squares, you have to find a way to play something like queen g5, and now the knight's really out of squares.
Oh, I see. Yeah, of course, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know what you do there really.
Maybe h6 is better. I haven't looked. I think g5 because you're keeping the knight out of f5.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just winning the piece now?
No, there are some ideas to hold it, like you can play queen f2 and then knight f5, so it's not winning the piece yet.
g3 maybe here.
Yeah, even here, there's probably some defensive idea, but maybe not. It's yeah, that looks like it's just a piece, huh?
Yeah, I think, just because of the check, I think, right? Otherwise you would have knight f3 or something, and be able, or actually that sort of makes more sense, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is all very
Yeah. So if there's nothing. So it's
g4 just really ends, and of course it completely shuts down the main idea that we're right. I mean, I can just do something like this.
Right.
There will be no queen trade. Thank you. There will be no Christmas this year.
And just from a logical standpoint, it's you have excellent dark square control. Just put something on the light squares, and good things will happen.
Yeah. Rufus, you said that you were looking at this during the game.
Yeah, I looked at knight h2, but after h5, wasn't entirely sure. No, knight h2, then knight h2, then h5. Yeah, because now I'm like, okay, well, I can't trade my can't force a queen trade really.
Yeah.
Well, that does hang the knight. So
true. That is fair. That is fair. Yeah. That
there
thing
it is again.
Earlier.
Yeah, that move, man.
Yeah, that's fair.
Too many times, an embarrassing number of times in bullet games.
That's okay. I usually hang the knight on h2 by moving the queen. So.
Yeah. So that's.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's just a really interesting, good lesson to me for sure. That I mean, I thought about that move a decent amount, like a 10 and a half when I'm starting to get into the the last third of my time. I feel okay about the amount of time I spent on it, but it's just I underestimated your defensive resources for sure. There's just better moves there. G4, H5's probably still pretty okay, and maybe even King B8 again, just in light of stopping all those checking queen trades. If they don't come with check, it probably makes
yeah, definitely. I think after knight G6, knight H2, King B8 makes the most sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that I think. Yeah. Now the fact that it doesn't come with check means this
exactly.
is out for lots of reasons.
Yeah, and now knight H4
too.
comes, so that's a big problem.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
I mean, it more or less compels this move, so it's
right.
And then you can think about how to continue.
Well, I was about to say this finally is a good place actually to reach, because this gets much closer to the game.
Mm-hmm.
So we can get back, I think, to the main line. So okay, so that was probably one of your last shots, I think.
Yeah.
And then so now I play the right move. I find it. And yeah, and then this was just you said this is just a simple mismatch.
Yeah,
it's even stronger now because the knight is on G6, so knight H2 is no good because of knight H4.
Right.
Yeah, this. Yeah, I knew I was very lost here, and I probably didn't put in as much effort at this point in terms of calculation. And so after winds up happening in the game after F2, I didn't think about F2 check and not being able to take it, and that just leads to a whole bunch of nasty ways to lose.
Yeah. I was. I guess yeah. Okay, I was looking at where I spent the time. I guess this is where I took. It's funny because I will say, like, I was happy with how it worked out, of course, but something that was similar between this game and last week's game was that I was like, man, he is finding ways to keep burning my time, though, because I had to sit here and work my way through that here, right? Before I played it before, like, okay, what is happening here? Can I make it?
Yeah.
So again, just a practical note, I wouldn't spend the time calculating it here, unless you're looking at bishop b4 to avoid that. And I think you can rule out bishop b4 pretty quickly just because it doesn't, like, you're disharmonizing the dark squares. I think g4 has to be played.
Okay.
Like, you should see enough to know that you can take here and it's fine. Like, even if there's some way to take on d6, like pretend the queen's not hanging or you have to take for whatever reason. Right. This position is still excellent for black just because of the open g file.
Right.
So seeing that far, I would not spend tons of time. And I don't think 3-4 minutes is an unreasonable amount of time to take. Like, it is a sharp position, so I think you were fine.
But I do take your point. And I was looking at bishop b4 a little bit, but ultimately rejected it. I don't think I put the nice phrasing to it that you did. I think I just thought that I had more forcing ways to proceed.
Mm-hmm. G4 is pretty forcing. I'm not sure it gets better than that.
Yeah, exactly. That I just was like, all right, this has to be stronger than this little bishop maneuver. So and then the rest of it is.
Yeah, there was one part after this where I had my finger on the resign button, but then I was like waiting for you to play the move, and then you didn't play it, and I was like, oh, all right, I guess I'll just continue. I'm sure there are better moves, which is probably why you didn't play it.
Yeah, would it have been much better to was there a moment to take the rook, or was there no chance to do that?
Takes.
Hang on, let's back up. I think I know what you. Yeah, knight h4 check here was a mistake. I should just.
Even after. Well, yes.
I'd knight the pawn, but that's just for.
Right.
Yeah.
Gratuitous reasons.
I think this is a little stronger though.
Right.
I think that this.
I guess takes, and then.
Yeah, that's right. Knight the pawn. You don't even have to calculate the in-between move.
Take here.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I had thought about that. Maybe knighting the pawn as well. Yeah.
There was.
It
was here where you played rook check. I figured you'd probably just play queen check to then take the knight.
Ah, I see.
and you take the knight, you attack the rook, and then this is it, and then you have rook check. It's all just falls apart. Whereas I thought after rook check, I mean, it's still pretty bad, but
Yeah.
But the rook here then obviously simplifies everything.
Right.
But-
No, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I really felt strongly about not losing the pawn was the thing. Because
Fair.
after queen g5, you can at least take here. I mean, I see it
Right.
now, right? I see what you're saying. Like, this is obviously fine for white.
Yeah, and then you're
I mean,
attacking
for
there
black.
and there and
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not going to sit here and argue. It's ridiculous. But
yeah. I hit the resign button once to get ready for the flag or whatever, because you have to double hit it. And I was like, all right, I'll just as soon as it happens, I'll hit it so he knows that I saw it. But then you didn't play it. I was like, oh, I guess I'll just try and keep being annoying.
Yeah, that's funny. I want him to know that I saw
The
it.
tactical
You didn't kill me
resignation.
with anything I had.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you may have gotten me with F2 check earlier, but I saw this one.
I get that.
Yeah.
I completely get that.
But yeah, rook e8 was so annoying. That was because I wanted to play rook c7, rook.
Oh
c-
yeah.
so
You get all these
badly.
checks and like there's
Yeah.
perpetual, maybe even mates.
Yeah, it was just it looks like such an annoying move. But then after rook he8, it's like, oh well, I can't. Or rook g8, it's like I can't do it.
Yeah. I don't remember at this point. I don't remember. I don't
No.
think I was like calculating forward.
No, at this
Very
point,
much one
bullet.
move at a
You
time.
can you can easily.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last thing I'll say is this is kind of a pretty checkmate.
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it
kind of
is,
like
for
an
sure,
interesting,
for sure.
like a weird. I gave it to one of my students yesterday afternoon, and he was complaining. This is really hard, which I don't agree with, but it's just kind of a weird. Yeah, just a.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've like seen that. That little. What is that? A 16 square. Yeah, that little 16 square section is like not a usual one. Well, all right, that was fruitful. Rufus, I can't play next week. I'm moving.
Fair enough.
So I just, I'm more than happy the week after that. Seriously, like
Okay, yeah.
Just going for a bit longer
Sounds good.
until I imagine at some point in the fall I'll get exhausted because work is continuing to pick up.
That's fair.
So I may, but I'm not saying definitively when that is. I mean,
Okay.
these are good for me. I'm getting to explore some things and
Mhm.
get a better handle. I'm still interested in getting
Oh
another
yeah,
game in that A4 line.
I'm definitely gonna play the A4 line next time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Obviously,
But,
I guess I'd have black next time we play, but the
Yeah,
one
yeah,
after
yeah.
that, it's
Right. No, for
yeah.
sure.
And I don't know. I might have to move times, but it'll probably be a similar time because classes start back up soon for me.
Right. Yeah. So we'll both have things to deal with. But
Yeah.
the movers are coming on Thursday, which has been my best day to play. So I just
Gotcha.
That seems
gonna
like an
give myself-
excellent reason to play chess. Maybe play on the
Yeah,
phone.
I'm gonna give myself a out there, and well, also, frankly, if it was just moving, but also Katie is leaving for England, so the combination of moving and my wife leaving,
That's fair.
I want those couple hours back. But yeah, I mean, I'm full go for the week after that. That's fine with me.
Great.
Well, great. I mean, thank you both for joining me, and thank anybody who's watching for joining us. And yeah, we are going to be doing plenty more game analyses and free games, and we have some simul events coming up, some things that we're looking forward to that I'll put on the stream schedule. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching. And once again, this has been Acceptable Chess.